To start this evening, before I make comments, if we could just pause a moment to remember the now 5 million people around the globe, around the world, who we've lost to COVID since it began. I'd like to just ask for a moment of silence for all those we've lost and all those of us in this room and across the globe who've been impacted so deeply. Thank you. I think I was having a conversation with Cabinet recently, and I said, within all of the amplified rhetoric and all of the strident, angry, often extraordinarily naughty voices, right? I think we've lost sight sometimes about what's most important. And what's most important really is our health and safety, our community that's global, and we have to find our way back, right? And events like this evening inspire me, as I know they do you, to remember what's so important. And as leaders, it's the quiet majority that doesn't seem always quiet, but at this point there are a quiet majority observing each of us in our communities and trusting us with this calm and the commitments that we make to do what's right, even when no one's looking. So I just wanted to start with that because I think at times we get caught up in this, if you will, cyclone of emotion. And as leaders, often it's our responsibility, and we're in the perfect room for us. As Ron Heifetz often talks about in adaptive leadership, right? Jumping to the balcony and then looking at the work on the dance floor. Because as superintendents, we have to visit the dance floor and we have to work within on-time topics, but we also have to be able to jump to the balcony and see the bigger picture and remind ourselves and our communities about what's most important. That is, after all, leadership. So this evening, I want to thank the AASA team. Dan was one of the first people I called when I knew we had to close schools in North Shore across the country. I had never met Dan. I saw his name come by often on emails, and I picked up the phone, and within 10 minutes, Dan returned my call. That's incredible. So thank you, Dan, for returning my call in February of 2020 when we were first beginning to wrestle with COVID. It's the power of network, team, and relationships, and it made all the difference. So I thank you. And Jimmy and Jennifer and Heather and all the AASA people. Jimmy, you've been fabulous to work with, and Jennifer's been ridiculously supportive and patient. So I just thank everybody involved. I also want to thank our North Shore team and district, without which I wouldn't be here this evening. My husband, our 4 children, our dogs, right, like our fur family. I'd also, I just want to recognize the finalists with me this year, Khalid Mouman and Christy Perry. Would you stand? They were our finalists. We were our group, so. Yeah. Fabulous, and I hope to get to know Khalid and Christy better in the next couple of days. Congratulations to Gustavo and a neighboring district. I know, we love Oregon when Washington wins. Sorry. And, while it may not be as apparent, Gustavo and I share some aspects of our early beginnings. I started kindergarten in Europe, not speaking English as well, before we moved to the United States. And so I understand being a multilingual learner. And even today, I think as I read and write and speak, sometimes I have to check my syntax. So I think from great struggle often comes great learning and great understanding, which we then carry in our work together. I know I'm all that stands between you and a night out tonight, so I don't have a great deal to say, but I want to share a few ideas that may seem a bit eclectic, but these are my thoughts this evening. I picked 3 words, and ironically, I've heard everyone speak about them this evening, so perhaps we're all in the same place a bit. I think the importance of grace and grit and gratitude are really what has made up my experience in the last 18 months. Grace being a gift, not earned often, and what we consistently, day after day after day, extend to one another, our community members, our families, and perhaps most importantly at times ourselves, right? Gratitude, I think, is really critical right now. I'm extraordinarily grateful to be an educational leader today in this country. I think we are at a crossroads again, because at times, I think as Paul said, of very great adversity, those are the times we could experience the most growth. And I think it's at such times as this that each of us need to remember our gratitude for the roles we have and the awesome responsibility we bear. As I mentioned in the interview, every profession goes through K-12 education. Every other profession in this country comes through us. We have the opportunity and the awesome responsibility to shape the future. And I'm grateful to be able to do that with colleagues like each of you, and colleagues back home in our community, and colleagues around the world who we've all connected with during the course of this pandemic. As I've mentioned several times in other interviews, our role is not simply about the impact that we have on children through the 12 or more years they spend with us. Our role as educational leaders is about the trajectory of the rest of their lives. It's a generational difference we make for children, and our greatest impact is when they leave us, not when they are with us. And it's those tools and the knowledge, the learning, the deep understanding they take with them that makes all the difference. And that's what I'm grateful for sure. My next slide, you're going to think, what in the world? You know, Michelle has lost it. It's a hummingbird, right? Took this in the windstorm recently in the Northwest, crazy windstorm, and I just thought, and ironically, it had the highest Twitter views of any of my Twitter messages recently, so I don't know what that says. I use that to illustrate that this has been really hard, right? We have hung on through this wind and this storm, and we have stayed focused on our business, whether in small ways or large ways. It has been a really hard time. And I want to say that even from the beginning, each of us had a beginning. Each of us remembers that first time that we realized we were going to have to close school, right? Everyone in the room remembers that moment like it was yesterday. We know what it felt like. We know what it felt like to think this is going to be for 4 weeks or 6 weeks, right? And the news cameras were in our face, and they said, so why are you closing school, right? And how long is it going to be? Well, so we know this has been a really difficult decision, and what I said to our cabinet, even from the beginning, because we began to live stream cabinet meetings so our community would see how we were making decisions, right? Very transparent. Also, we didn't have a lot of time, so we could either spend all our time communicating and not working, or working and not communicating, in which case people would think we weren't doing anything. So we just started to live stream our cabinet meetings. And one of the things we said is that we realized that leadership is illuminated when there is no roadmap to a solution. Every one of us had this opportunity, right? This moment in time, and we had no idea, no playbook, no plan, no roadmap for what the next step should be. And that's when leadership matters. And that's what each of you maneuvered and worked through in loving and compassionate ways in your community to keep people alive and well. I often think about this job, and I think about consistent acts of courage and conscience make such a deep difference. Small, large, it's the consistency of the acts of courage and conscience that matter. I think that Nico Quaban talked about the importance of faith, family, and friends rather than fans, fame, and fortune. And his commentary was really about the idea that when you do things for others and not yourself, they last long after you're gone. And when you do things primarily for yourself, they are gone when you are. And I think about that as legacy moves. Many of us have been in this work a very long time, 42 years. And that's a very, very long time. But our legacy is what we leave our faith, family, and friends, and the work we've done for so many others, so many of you around this room have. I want to go to the next slide. Billie Jean King just has a new book out called All In. And when I was a young girl coming from Europe, one of my passions was playing tennis. Briefly, I played professionally as an amateur and love tennis to this day. I had an injury and so forth. But one of the things that she talks about is this world that she didn't see herself in, and it wasn't the world she expected. And so she knew it was her generation that must fix it, remedy it. Well, her generation, right, is waning at this point. And I think about that. I think as a young girl, this was such an important idea to me even, to think about if there's something about this world, our work, our journey, that isn't working, we have a responsibility to do something about it, and that's why we're in the roles we're in. I had a good friend many years ago, Bud Scar, who's passed away, and Bud used to say, if you walk by mediocrity, you have lost the moral authority to lead. And I think if you walk by mediocrity or injustice, we have lost the moral authority to lead. And it's every comment, it's every conversation, it's every statement, it's every systemic item that is unjust, mediocre, or not right. And if we walk by those and don't challenge those at every step, we have lost the moral authority to lead. And that's really what this work is about. Leadership is hard. It's really difficult. I want to one of my favorite colleagues, Richard Elmore, I don't know how many of you worked with Richard for many years. Richard said that organizations that improve do so because they create and nurture agreement on what is worth achieving. And they set in motion the internal processes by which people progressively learn how to do what they need to do in order to achieve what is worthwhile. It's not our role always to decide what's worthwhile. And I think, as our Deputy Secretary talked about as a strength, is bringing people together on these big ideas. We have to make sure that we nurture and support the platform for those ideas to come. And then it is our role to make sure we have a theory of action to carry those off the page. And we can achieve it. We simply have to decide what's most worthwhile right now because we have limited energy. And that needs to be our focus, our relentless focus. I think about this picture often, and what it reminds me of is our young people. Students are my passion. I think it was the first time I saw that video tonight. Both Gustavus and I were like, did you see that before? I had no idea what was going to be on the screen tonight, and I was a little emotional and taken aback before I started speaking tonight because it's emotional to see your work on a screen in front of your colleagues. It just is. It's very humbling. And when I look at the student voice, and by the way, I want to share about Mason. I had no idea that Mason was going to be quoted from Bothell High School. I met Mason as a middle school student, and he told me, I remember walking into his math class, and he says, oh, he's a little bit of an extrovert. It's Dr. Reid. Imagine the possibilities. And I looked and I said, so do I know you? And he said, I'm Mason, right? So that's how I got to know Mason as a 7th grader. And he said, I'll never forget it, Dr. Reid, you need to take charge of your weekends. He said, I see you tweeting that you're at events and games, but you need to be the CEO of your weekends. And I thought, talk about radical self-care. Anyhow, we could talk about Mason, but he's quite a character, so it moves me deeply. I will have to go back Monday and find him and thank him. So anyhow, this picture, I want to remind each of you in the room that 65% of the children in our classrooms today are preparing for a career that does not yet exist. 65% of the children in our classrooms, we are preparing them for careers that do not exist yet today. And when you think about that and the awesome responsibility of that, and what are the skills we most need to provide these children, we need to make sure that in the community that there's a deep sense of belonging, not just connectedness. We need to make sure that each of them is seen, heard, and affirmed, both as students and later as staff. I know that one of my heroes over time was Ruth Bader Ginsburg. RBG is somebody that I've admired for many, many years for many reasons. Not just her body of work and her intellect and her groundbreaking transformational work, but her ability to see and cross all political spectrum in terms of relationships, her ability to bring people along or to foster understanding among really divergent viewpoints. My favorite quote, which I often use with our staff, is, "Fight for the things that you care about, but do it in a way that will lead others to join you." And I think about that often when I think of her. And I think about that because one of our most important challenges is reopening the schools of the future and not the schools of the past. The schools of the past never were the schools that served all children. And it's so important as we think about reopening schools right now that we think about what's going on for every child in our system and every member of our community. Our schools of the future, we have an opportunity to have a historic impact. And I think some of the mental anxiety of our staff right now, does anyone have anxious staff? Maybe we're the only ones in North Shore. I see everybody else seems to be like really calm. I guess I'll have to do some introspective thought or ask a lot of questions over the next days. But I think part of it is we expected something to be different when we came back. We expected something to be a little different, and to know it's kind of falling back into some of the same things that we weren't happy about, honestly, before. And we have to have the energy, I think, and the focus and the relentless vision to continue with the idea of reopening the schools of the future and not the past. And to that, thank you. That quote, I think, there are many about that, but it's very important. Our students don't want that. Our student board, I'll talk a little bit about Friday morning, their input onto that. But I want to finish with just some lyrics. I also wanted to thank Ben, our violinist that was here this evening. Does anyone know Ben? He had to leave, but he is actually a middle school orchestra teacher in Maryland. So I don't know where the Maryland superintendents are. Where? Maryland? Anyhow, I thought that was really an interesting story. He said, "I'm actually a middle school orchestra teacher." Who knew, right? And I will also say, and Deputy Secretary, it's fabulous to have an educator in the Department of Education, but I think about, and I am concerned about, so one little political moment before I read the lyrics that moved me and sustained me through this entire crisis, so I hope you'll indulge me on that. But I would just say that No Child Left Behind started in 2001. We've had 20 years of measuring, and I know accountability is important in some form, but this move to get everyone to this standard, the narrowing of our curriculum, we've had an entire generation of children move through our schools, K-12, in 20 years. And the things, in many cases, that were left out are the things we most need our communities to have right now. The arts, the ability to communicate with each other, the understanding of civics, the understanding about how we are in community together. Those soft skills and elective courses that were so narrowed for the last 20 years, I fear, have created a situation which we're still going to dig out from for quite a little while. So I know that that this work is important, and we have to find ways to hold ourselves accountable in different ways to the outcomes that we believe in and know are right for our communities. I'm going to read the lyrics. Again, I shared that I'm a Ruth Bader Ginsburg fan through and through. I don't know how many of you watched her memorial service, but Denise Graves sang a very moving hymn or song, the American anthem. And it spoke to me when I heard it, and I've replayed it, my poor husband, probably 1,000 times, right, on Spotify. But the lyrics moved me then, they move me now, and I think will sustain me moving forward. So if you'll, I won't sing it. My fifth grade teacher, Mrs. Wolf, said mouth words at the holiday concert. I know, it's a thing. So anyhow, so the lyrics go, all we've been given by those who came before, the dream of a nation where freedom would endure. The work and prayers of centuries have brought us to this day. What shall be our legacy? What will our children say? Let them say of me, I was one who believed in sharing the blessings I received. Let me know in my heart when my days are through, America, America, I gave my best to you. Each generation from the plains to distant shore, with the gifts, what they were given, were determined to leave more. Battles fought together, acts of conscience fought alone. These are the seeds from which America has grown. Let them say of me, I was one who believed in sharing the blessings that I received. Let me know in my heart when my days are through, America, America, I gave my best to you. For those who think they have nothing to share, who fear in their hearts there is no hero there, know each quiet act of dignity is that which fortifies the soul of a nation that never dies. Let them say of me, I was one who believed in sharing the blessings I received. Let me know in my heart when my days are through, America, America, I gave my best to you. America, I gave my best to you. I thank you. I look forward to meeting each of you in the next couple days, and Godspeed on a fabulous rest of the school year. Good night.